Switch controllers, Switch Joy-Cons. What a world. There are so many. We've got the official Nintendo ones. We've got licensed ones with Nintendo that are intentionally kneecapped. And then we have third-party ones that range from anywhere to, are you sure this isn't a Fisher-Price toy, to, this is decent, to maybe this is very good. I'm your cool Uncle Marissa, and I am once again reviewing a set of Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons. This time it is from Mobapad, and the kind folks at Mobapad messaged me and they were like, hey, do you want to try these out? And I checked out the page and stuff and I was like, this is interesting. These actually look quite sturdy. They look very sleek. There are cute options available as well in the form of various face plates. So there's a pink one, there's a blue and purple one, which you know which one I got. And then there's a white one, which is very sleek. It gives me kind of like PC gamer vibes. If you know what I mean, you know what I mean. But most importantly, they have all the original capabilities of the Joy-Con. So they have NFC, they have motion controls, and most importantly, they have rumble. And not just any rumble, they have HD rumble. These are the Mobapad M6 HD, and I got sent a set of these controllers and absolutely blessed them because the first set got stolen from the postman, so I had to file a claim and they had to send me another, just like, thank you, USPS. Thank you so much, Mobapad, for your patience through all this. But I finally got them. I got a few weeks to play around with them, and I'd like to just talk through my experience and sort of show you as firsthand as I can. So let's run on over to the desk and see what it's all about. So here we have the M6 HD. Just a few things it comes with. So you'll notice the D-pad is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 octagonal. It also does come with a replacement D-pad that is more traditional. We'll take a look at that later. This was also sent to me. It is a Bluetooth dongle, so you can use it with your computer and stuff like that. It also sent me a case. I'll show that to you guys in a bit, but it's good to know that there is a case because the one thing with grips like this is always like, oh, okay, so if I'm someone who takes my Nintendo Switch out a lot, how do I make sure that I have a case for it since it will no longer fit in the traditional case? All right, so let's look at them form factor wise. So they are quite wide and they're actually very nice to hold. Look at that. Now, nothing really means anything in a vacuum, so I'm gonna just take this one and we're gonna compare it first with a normal Joy-Con. Although to call my lovely vibrant green Joy-Con normal is a disservice. So that is quite a bit thicker, or wider rather. And you can see there's also just, there's an angle to this one, whereas your regular Joy-Con is straight. And this one therefore is fruity. It's kind of like at the thickest point. It's almost the size of like 2 Joy-Cons, 1.5. Looking at the back, wow, this one definitely got a BBL. Was it like 3 Joy-Con size? So comfort wise, over a regular Joy-Con, there is no question. It has a grip, but it's got a mighty grip. So let's now compare it form wise to my current favorites, the Hori Split Pad Compact. So these are my Dragon Quest ones. The Split Pad Compact is also straight, not angled, but it does have a grip on the back. You can see that the Mobapad went for like the full BBL. But one thing that's nice about the Hori is the indent here, where you rest your hand, is deeper. This one the indent is pretty shallow. It feels more like your grip on it is less one finger resting here and the rest of your finger is resting on the butt, and more just like you're holding the butt. With the Hori, you have like you're resting in the indent and the rest of your fingers are resting on the butt. I think in terms of hold feel, I do prefer it to the Hori. If this was more indented, that would be wonderful. I wish it wasn't so shallow, because then you would really be resting your index finger inside that indent as opposed to just sort of like holding it. In fact, because of the indent being so shallow, there's this feeling of heaviness, like it's sitting on your fingers as opposed to you resting your fingers on it. I hope that makes sense. If you have comfort-wise, we're just talking comfort-wise, if you have tried the Hori Split Pad Compact and you feel it's too thin for your hands, if your hands are quite large, I think this one would definitely be an improvement. I was actually, wondering if it would be too big for me, but it's actually not. I don't have small hands, but I know that a lot of, especially cis men, have bigger hands than me. All right, now let's talk about listening to the sound. So they say in their description that they have Omron, I don't know, switches, which are the same micro switches you find in mice, the computer ones, not the rodents. And they go click, click, click. And if you've watched any of my videos on controls, you know I do not like the click, click, click. Now, I don't know what I assumed or where I assumed they would be, but let me tell you, they are everywhere. So when I opened up the box and I just messed around with the buttons, it was an auditory nightmare for me. So let's listen. The back buttons and the front setting buttons, home buttons, assign, turbo, plus and minus buttons are kind of just normal clicky switches. But the triggers, the ABXY buttons, and the D-pad are all these micro switches. And it sounds so maddening to me. So I'm just going to do a quick audio comparison, so you can hear one Joy-Con after the other to get an idea of the difference in sound. You can make up your own mind on which one you like the most, sound-wise. I think that the Mobapad and the Hori are on completely opposite sides of the spectrum, with the regular Joy-Cons being in the middle. These do have a click, but it's not troublesome to me. It is it's not a deep click, but it's on the lower end of the frequencies, so it doesn't trouble me. But the Hori, which I love, are just very soft membrane. So with the D-pad, you barely hear it. And with the ABXY buttons, they are deeper sounding and not loud. And then on the complete opposite end of the spectrum with the Mobapad, very high pitched. And to be honest, I don't think that they're any louder. They're not any louder than the standard Joy-Cons, volume-wise, I would say, just from using my ears. But the Mobapad is much sharper, much higher frequency, really just cuts through the air for me a lot more. After sort of hearing that melodic nightmare of click, 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 I thought, you know what, this is not the end for these, because what if you were to wear headphones or earbuds or something that's noise canceling with these while you're playing and just, listen to the game? Or upside down. You would not hear them, right? So let's actually focus on the way that it plays. So this is what I noticed. The ABXY buttons are actually quite nice, I do admit. They have this really nice bounce back when you play, and so they just feel very responsive. Same with like the trigger buttons and the bumpers, they feel very responsive. There's not a lot of travel on the ZL and ZR buttons, but there is a nice amount of resistance, and that also makes them feel very responsive. But then we get to the D-pad. So when you press down on the D-pad, if you move your your thumb just a little bit, you immediately get a diagonal. And when you do try to hit a diagonal, the sound of both the micro switches is maddening. I know I said I would lay off the sound, but like 2 switches at once is just like, oh my god. Awful. It's very easy to hit an accidental diagonal, which just walking in Bastion is fine. Imagine if you were playing a game that was faster, like a platformer where you want the precision and you want it to be quick. This is not ideal. For a quick comparison, I'm not going to do the original Joy-Cons because they don't have a traditional D-pad. But for comparison, if we take the Hori, and so I have my finger on left, and I'm going up and down. On right, going up and down. My character is not making a diagonal. He does not make a diagonal until I intentionally roll to the up of the D-pad and I make a diagonal. Now, I don't usually use a D-pad for a lot of games. I'm not like trying to get that precision all the time, but the fact that it's so easy to lose the precision with the D-pad on the Mobapad it's really rough. Now let's quickly look at the joysticks. Now the joysticks are always essentially the same on these third-party Joy-Cons, but they tend to just have a difference in material and design. When I was playing with these, they felt really unsteady to me, and it took me a minute to figure out why, because they feel smaller to me than Joy-Con sticks. And I'm like, they're not though. And the reason for that is the center is very slippery, and there's only a grip on the outside. And the grip on the outside, to be honest, is not very grippy either. And so when you're holding it, your finger is slipping a lot. And I'm not someone who really gets sweaty palms when I'm playing. But if you're playing something very fast and precise, you're gonna be in trouble because it's very, very slippery. So if you liked everything else about this set of Joy-Cons, except for the slipperiness, I would absolutely get thumbstick covers for comparison. So with our regular Joy-Cons, we have it convex. So the entire surface is grippy. That's one thing. It's all rubber, but also it is convex, and so your finger is not going to slip off as much, if at all. Now, I do agree that concave feels better, and that's where Hori does it right. Hori has a concave joystick, but it also has a full grip. So there's a grip on the inside as well as the outside, and it has a like a diamond style grid pattern. So there's much less of a chance of losing your grip than even the original Joy-Con. Whereas this one, incredibly slippery on the inside, you can lose your grip very quickly. That's also a bummer because I was like, okay, well, what if you're just using these guys and the face buttons and the triggers, and you don't have to worry about the terrible D-pad, but these are something that you would have to remedy as well. Now, speaking of the D-pad, I wondered if the D-pad would be remedied by replacing it. That's right, replacing it. So one thing that's pretty cool about this is you can replace the D-pad. So you just pop it off. So you can see it is concave. So your finger can sort of sit in the middle and then jump up on the sides. And when I first saw this, I was very excited about it, and I thought it would really help with precision. So I was really disappointed to see that instead it was giving me a lot of false diagonals. While we're here, let's also just cutify this, because this is not my aesthetic, is it? And that's another cool thing, is it's got magnetic plates. And I think they have like 3 color choices right now. They have the white, and they have the pinks, and then they have this purple and blue with a yellow D-pad. And I think this is just way cuter and a lot more up my alley. But I do appreciate that they've got, the font on these, and especially the white one, they are very like capital G gamer, like kind of ROG Ally, Microsoft console vibes to me, and having something slightly different is really nice to kind of broaden the appeal. Now with these D-pads, let me just show you. You have a diagonal here, and that diagonal is on the top left, where there is another diagonal. Here we have the new D-pad. Let's see if this changes things. Nope. So I was really disappointed to find out that the ease of just accidental diagonals has nothing to do with the D-pad cover, which I guess makes sense. And then this D-pad to boot, it's just bad. So these are really hard to take out once they're in. So I'm gonna show you on the white one. This D-pad is flat. It's not concave, it's not convex, so it's really uncomfortable to rest your finger on while you're playing. And you just sort of like swipe. You have to like swipe around to get the different, like it feels uncomfortable. It's unfortunate because in terms of just hand feel, this feels like rather premium, but this D-pad feels extremely cheap to the touch. Comparing that, you know, again, we don't have a D-pad on the original Joy-Con because we have these 4 separate ones, but arguably this is concave because when your finger is in the middle, it is resting in this space between the buttons. And then with the Hori one, you are quite concave and the tips of the D-pad are raised, and that feels very comfortable to me. In terms of comfort, playability, I would not choose these. The buttons are very responsive. If you look at it from the edge, that bounce is really nice. Like, ignoring the sound, if you're someone who likes the sound, comparing that, for example, to the Hori, like, it has a bounce. Obviously, they're buttons. That's what they do. They bounce. But it doesn't have like this natural, it feels very bubble-like. I don't know how to describe it, but they feel like wonderful little bubbles that just bounce up. So I do like those face buttons. The trigger buttons, I think, is an odd choice to have them click, especially because I feel like, you know, they're supposed to feel like triggers, and they definitely don't. But I can appreciate the responsiveness there too. However, when we come to the joysticks, it's just very uncomfortable and just not reliable in terms of being precise, in terms of when you're playing for a long time. I could see them being very uncomfortable. And same with the D-pad. While the alternate D-pad is comfortable, there's so many false diagonals that it's like, what's the point? And then the other alternate D-pad, it just feels incredibly cheap, like a Fisher-Price toy. Nowhere to put your finger, and again, false diagonals. So in a way, it doesn't matter if it was cashmere. That would be a very strange choice, but it doesn't matter because it's just bad. I'm honestly really disappointed with that. Oh, and in terms of hold, like the grip comfort, this might be better on a standard Switch, but on the OLED, because it's so wide, compared to, you know, even the Hori, it feels like it's not very comfortable for me to hold as like a petite woman, because if I'm holding it straight, my elbows are kind of like sticking out from my body. Whereas usually when I play, you know, I want my elbows kind of against my body, but when I do that, I've got it like this, so my palms, like the edges at the bottom, are digging into my palms. That is not, I think, a fault of this. I think this is definitely, the Mobapad is definitely aiming at people who want a larger grip, who have larger hands, and who therefore I imagine would have a larger torso as well. And I think that would fit well for them, but not for me. And I just want to quickly show you the case. The case is very nice. It's simple. It says Mobapad on it, but I appreciate that they didn't go too crazy. And the inside is very soft. It doesn't feel like a material that will cause a lot of lint or anything. It's very low pile. And then there's this lovely soft little part for your games. And yeah, and it fits very snug. I have a Switch OLED for reference, and yeah, it's a lovely case. And it feels just very, I guess, premium. And it would be nice if they brought that same sort of functionality to the actual Mobapad Joy-Cons. All right, so that is the Mobapad M6 HD Joy-Cons. They have a lot going on. There are very significant pros and there are very significant cons that can vary based on who you ask and who you are and what your preferences are. So while it is not for me, let's just run through the pros and cons to kind of get an idea of who this is for, because I don't think that these will top the Hori Split Pad Compact for me. However, these are not at all terrible Joy-Cons. So in terms of pros, the comfort, the thick back is really nice. It feels very substantial, and I think especially for people with larger hands, not only is the thickness going to be something that they will feel good holding, but the fact that it makes your Switch even wider is going to be nice also for anyone with a larger stature, so that instead of, holding like this, you can hold more with your arms out like this, which is how I feel with like the regular Switch and the Split Pad Compact, is I'm kind of like, okay, yeah, like this. And, but I'm sure that there are people who feel like they're like this, and that's just very uncomfortable. So that's fantastic. If you want a more PC gamer aesthetic, this is one where that's available, because a lot of Joy-Cons do lean into that cuter factor, which is why I love them so much, but not everyone is chasing that aesthetic. But at the same time, it has the magnetic faceplates, and therefore you are able to customize it to something cuter if that is your preference. Of course, with the absolute prevalence of Joy-Con drift, all the ways we've tried to fix it, all the ways everyone has tried to sue Nintendo over it, and we've gotten to the point where it's just the Switch 2 is on its way, and no real consequence has been had for such terrible design. The Hall effect joysticks are a wonderful addition as well. In terms of the buttons, if you like the sound of switches, or if you don't mind the sound of these micro switches, the responsiveness of the ABXY buttons and the responsiveness of the triggers is really wonderful. It's got this sort of bounce that I don't think I've really experienced with other consoles. It feels very bubbly, as I said. Of course, it has all the standards of the assign buttons, the extra back buttons. You get those in a lot of upgrade Joy-Cons, and I will put those in the Pro section because they are good additions to have. The controllers also, they don't feel cheap. They feel quite good. They feel good quality, and they feel well made. On the con side, the clicking, if you either are not a fan of that, if you're someone who plays at night and you sleep next to someone, they will kick you out of the house. I promise, unless they are just completely unless they're Snorlax. If they're Snorlax, you're probably gonna be fine. But if they're anything but, they're not gonna be very happy with you. So I am saying they will ruin your marriage. I'm kidding. I don't think they will ruin your marriage. But they're not for a gaming session where you are in a quiet place or you're winding down with someone. They are very much a loud, make their presence known, and so that can be a con for that kind of situation. Or if you just have an aversion to that sound like I do, then that is definitely a con as well. The width, the additional width can be a con if you are a smaller stature like me, but overall the biggest cons with these are the fact that the Joy-Con joysticks are so slippery and small. There's no proper grip, and with the D-pad, there's a lot of chance for accidental diagonals. Now, neither of these things, in my opinion, are so bad that it's unusable or, make me think that it's poor quality. In fact, I think if you play a game that doesn't require precision, you're fine. Like, I could imagine if you're playing a JRPG, you're probably gonna be fine because you just, walk around, menu selects. I love JRPGs. I'm making fun of myself at this point. But any game that doesn't require precision, it can be good for that. But if you do play like platformers or anything that relies on speed, anything that relies on very accurate inputs, or if you get sweaty palms while you play, then you are gonna have trouble keeping your hand on the joystick, and you're going to have trouble getting your correct D-pad inputs in. Okay, this is Future Uncle. I have no idea how I forgot to talk about one of the things that's most important to me, which is price. So despite there being some pros to the Mobapad M6 HD Joy-Cons, the price is a huge turnoff. It is MSRP'd at almost $100 with a pretty much internal sale of $79.99, and this gets you the Joy-Cons and the replacement faceplates to use the 2 different D-pads. And if you want to get it with the case, for example, it's like, I think $100 at that point. And if you want to get different colored faceplates, it's an extra $20, which again is the infinite sale price. Or if you go without the buttons, it's $10 down from 16. Now, just for a point of reference, the Split Pad Pro, which is a lot more similar in width and size, I would say, if you have larger hands and the compact is too small, is a MSRP of $50, and the Split Pad Compact is an MSRP of $50 as well. The Split Pad Compact attachment set comes out to $79.99 MSRP, and both of these are way cheaper. And these, granted, do not have rumble, NFC, or motion controls. The attachment set does have a headset jack and stuff, which is pretty neat, but I talk about that in the review for that guy. You can check that out. And then at that point, the official Nintendo Pro controller, which is arguably the best controller there is $70. It might be an unfair comparison because it's not a Joy-Con, but I feel like, Joy-Cons should be cheaper than the Pro controller. But yeah, I feel like the price of these really kills it. I'm not sure what they were thinking. So unfortunately, I cannot say this is the completely just best Joy-Con replacement I've tried. It's not going to topple the Hori Split Pad Compact for me personally, but I also know a lot of people who don't like the Hori Split Pad Compact. So you might be watching this and being like, actually, this seems like the one for me. And if that's the case, that is fantastic. And there is a coupon code in the description so that you can save a little bit on your purchase. Thank you so much again to Mobapad for sending these over. I just can't ever get over the amount of just innovation and different options there are when it comes to Nintendo Switch accessories. And we've really come a long way from when third-party controllers were just seen as, this is the guest controller. Like, there are ones which have features that far exceed the OEM controllers, and I think that is really amazing. So we live in a good time in that sense. A huge thank you as always to my Ko-fi supporters for making these videos possible, and thank you to you, yes you, for watching. Do not forget that you are always welcome at Cool Uncle's house, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.